Hey everyone, welcome to another installment of Harry Potter Theory. In today's video, we're going to be discussing the Death Eaters and the followers of Lord Voldemort. More specifically, however, we're going to be discussing one follower in particular, notorious mass-murdering werewolf Fenrir Greyback. Now, not unlike our own world, the wizarding world is broken up into two types of people, the morally righteous and the morally corrupt. This dichotomy is a common theme in literary works, and in Harry Potter, the darker side of this spectrum is represented by the Death Eaters. It all started in the late 1930s, when a young man by the name of Tom Riddle began attending Hogwarts. On the outside, Riddle appeared to be a normal, respectable young man, but on the inside, deep down, he had a lot of demons that pushed him to do unthinkable things. He didn't have a mother or father figure. He was just left at an orphanage, and so he never had any true concept of love or family. This rough start to life only made Riddle worse, as if he had been adopted by a loving family, things could have potentially been different. He was conceived under a love potion, and this fact suggests that he is incapable of love, but Rowling also stated that if Riddle's mother were around to care for him, then he would have been able to comprehend love. Love aside, Riddle didn't even have a concept of friendship, which is why Riddle's time at Hogwarts was so significant. When Riddle began at Hogwarts, he was sorted into Slytherin House, and it didn't take long for him to form a group of friends, at least that's what it looked like. Of course, these friends were really just his followers, a group once described by Dumbledore as a mixture of the weak seeking protection, the ambitious seeking glory, and the thuggish seeking a leader who could show them more refined cruelty. Initially, these friends were known as the Knights of Walpurgis, but fast forward to 1970, and they were known by a different name, the Death Eaters. At this stage, Voldemort had decided to fully act on his dark nature, and he brought other witches and wizards along for the ride. The Death Eaters were the most loyal followers of Voldemort, obeying his every bidding in an effort to cleanse the wizarding world. The goal of the group was simple: establish pureblood authority. Given that Voldemort's goal was to basically oppress anyone that wasn't a pureblood witch or wizard, you'll be surprised to hear that some members of the group weren't actually purebloods. In fact, many of their followers were of breeds that Death Eaters held considerable stigma towards, people like Fenrir Greyback. Fenrir Greyback was a large, vicious-looking werewolf and follower of Voldemort, notorious for his savagery and brutality when it came to targeting children. He had a bestial appearance with matted grey hair, whiskers, pointed teeth, and long yellow nails. He was a nightmare-inducing figure. However, Greyback wasn't always such a monster. In fact, he had quite a rough start to his life, being bitten by a werewolf very early on and infected with lycanthropy. Lycanthropy involves a lycanthrope, also known as someone who transforms into a werewolf. Sometimes they do it purposely, but other times it is the result of a curse. There is no cure for lycanthropy, and people deeply fear this condition as it can result in a cursed existence. After being bitten, Fenrir went sour and made it his goal in life to infect as many people as possible with lycanthropy. He didn't want to be an outcast, and with so much stigma placed on lycanthropes, he embraced his condition and instead made it his goal to create enough werewolves to dominate the wizarding world. Greyback became a leader in the werewolf community, and was even the one to infect Remus Lupin with lycanthropy after Lyle Lupin, Remus's father, insulted werewolves. Despite leading a revolution of his own, Fenrir Greyback and the werewolves eventually became allies with Voldemort for the Second Wizarding War. However, it's worth mentioning that though they were followers of Voldemort, they did not bear the Dark Mark, nor were they actual Death Eaters. They were just his followers. With that being said, Fenrir was one of Voldemort's most useful weapons, a fear-inspiring, bloodthirsty werewolf that even frightened, just a little bit, Albus Dumbledore. "Is that you, Fenrir?" asked Dumbledore. "That's right," rasped the other. "Pleased to see me, Dumbledore?" "No, I cannot say that I am." Fenrir Greyback grinned, showing pointed teeth. Blood trickled down his chin, and he licked his lips slowly, obscenely. "But you know how much I like kids, Dumbledore. Am I now to take it that you are attacking even without the full moon? This is most unusual. You've developed a taste for human flesh that cannot be satisfied once a month?" "That's right," said Greyback. "Shocks you that, doesn't it, Dumbledore? Frightens you? Well, I cannot pretend it does not disgust me a little," said Dumbledore, and Greyback raised a yellow fingernail and picked at his front teeth, leering at Dumbledore. "I could do you for afters, Dumbledore." And despite Voldemort using him as a weapon and taking advantage of his fearful reputation, it's reinforced again and again that Greyback was not a Death Eater. Voldemort only used him for the useful and convenient services that he provided. Basically, anything that helped him to get to power quickly. "You haven't heard of him?" Lupin's hands closed convulsively in his lap. Fenrir Greyback is, perhaps, the most savage werewolf alive today. He regards it as his mission in life to bite and to contaminate as many people as possible. He wants to create enough werewolves to overcome the wizards. Voldemort has promised him prey in return for his services. Greyback specializes in children. Bite them young, he says, and raise them away from their parents. Raise them to hate normal wizards. Voldemort has threatened to unleash him upon people's sons and daughters. It is a threat that usually produces good results. So now you might be asking, why? If Fenrir Greyback produced such good results for the Dark Lord, was he not made to be a fully fledged Death Eater? In the text, it's highlighted that Greyback was not granted this honor. "Will you summon him?" "Here," said Scabior, sounding awed, terrified. "No," snarled Greyback. "I haven't got... They say he's using the Malfoy's place as a base. We'll take the boy there." Harry thought he knew why Greyback was not calling Voldemort. The werewolf might be allowed to wear Death Eater robes when they wanted to use him, but only Voldemort's inner circle were branded with the Dark Mark. Greyback had not been granted this highest honor. Greyback had no Dark Mark, which is why he couldn't summon Voldemort in this instance. Furthermore, Greyback wouldn't have ever been eligible to receive a Dark Mark because of the very fact that he was a lycanthrope. As I mentioned earlier, there is considerable stigma in the wizarding community toward werewolves, and that stigma is not exclusive to the good guys. It was a mutual feeling between both sides of power in the wizarding world. Here's the thing, Fenrir was a powerful weapon, and Voldemort knew that he would be able to take advantage of Fenrir's notoriety to help control the wizarding population and escalate his own rise to power. It didn't matter to Voldemort that he was a werewolf, not really. He held some stigma towards him, which is why he would have never made him a Death Eater, but Voldemort's real enemies were Muggleborns, Half-Bloods, Muggles, and Blood Traitors. Fenrir wasn't the only follower of Voldemort that wasn't a pure-blood wizard. He enlisted giants, dementors, and all other manners of dark creatures to help bring down the Ministry and the good guys. Voldemort was manipulative, and he basically did whatever it took to get to power the fastest. If people were willing to work for him under the guise that they were somehow important, he would certainly let that happen. It was a win-win for him. However, given that Fenrir's ultimate objective was to infect as many witches and wizards as possible with lycanthropy, I'm willing to bet that if Voldemort had achieved power and was victorious at the Battle of Hogwarts, he would have eradicated the werewolves. Not because he particularly wanted to kill them, but because they would have posed a threat to his regime. And that's it for this video. If you enjoy the content, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, remember, wit beyond measure is a man's greatest treasure.